Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the 300 Fathers podcast. I am your host, Troy Woods. Excited on today. I have my brother with me. I truly look up to this young man here. He's in the area with me, but he's doing some amazing work in Baltimore. He's the pastor of Renewed Mind Worship Center. His name is Pastor Tyon Horne. I mean, this guy is. We were just talking before we went live. He's coming up on 22 years of marriage. He's been with his bride for 32 years, and that in of itself is something that I truly admire in today's world, because to me that's leading by example. So I want to welcome you, sir, to the 300 Fathers podcast. How you doing?
Be here, man. It's good to be here with you. Love you, man.
I love you too, man. This is one of those things where I wanted to speak with you, as I mentioned earlier, because there's a lot of different things going on. There's a lot of things going on in our world. There's a lot of things going on in our community.
Yeah.
And I believe that the voices that we speak with now, and I was sharing with Kelly not too long ago. I said the voices that we speak with now, I think are going to echo for a long time.
Yes.
I think we're in a place where there's no more living in the gray area, man.
Yeah.
And my age, I feel like, through history, when we've seen different things come up as far as in society, there were always defining moments, and our generation or generations before would say, I remember what happened, in Watts, or I remember what happened with Dr. King, or I think this is one of those defining moments that we're living in because it's different, you know. But before we get into current events, one thing that I wanted to chat with you about, and we always here at 300 Fathers, one of our models is we're here to develop high performance fatherhood.
Yeah.
Right. And so briefly, I wanted you to share just from your experience as a leader, as a leader of many, as a husband, as a father. What are some of your perceived challenges that fathers face in today's world?
Wow. That's a great question. I think that's a very important question. I believe one of the challenges that fathers face in today's world, and again, aside from what's going on in society, if we can just take what's going on in our homes, it's the ability to create functionality, a healthy, functional home. That's the greatest challenge.
Right.
Because most of the fathers I grew up with,
Right.
they didn't grow up in that.
Okay.
So you didn't have an example to replicate or something to reproduce because you didn't come from it.
Okay. I got you. Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I didn't have your typical two-parent home. I had an abusive home. It was another parent there. It wasn't my parent.
Okay.
But it was verbal, physical abuse. And so me wanting to replicate that was crazy. I mean, I wasn't going to try to model that, because I'm abusive. I don't like domestic violence. And so when it was time for me to be a husband and a father, I didn't have much to pull from. My community was laden with drug dealers and, stuff like that. Not only, but I didn't get to see a lot of the hardworking fathers. I wasn't around them. I think one of the biggest things is really trying to have functionality in your home where there's peace. Peace between you and your spouse, and then having an opportunity to actually be in the world of your child while trying to navigate them to be who they're supposed to be. That's big, man. That's challenging.
So what do you, on that piece right there, what do you think, you said something key, be in the world of your child.
Yeah.
I think a lot of fathers, of course, we know, and honestly, this is one of the I guess the adjectives of fathers that we always hear is a provider, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But a lot of times that's constrained to financial,
Yeah.
you know. So when you say being there, can you go into that a little bit about what do you mean by that?
Yes, sir. So I struggled in the area of understanding well, we could go with my oldest son. He's 26 now. He's a very
Wow.
handsome young man, looks just like his father. Uh, and so I struggled early on with parenting him out of fear.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
I had walked away from a certain lifestyle because I
Okay.
didn't want him to have to draw from that past life. And being in his world was challenging for me because I was trying to get him to go according to the world I pictured for him,
Okay.
and not
Okay.
necessarily getting into what his goals and his dreams and his aspirations were. And so I believe being a provider is a lot more than just money or financial. I think it's also providing emotional stability
That's
for
good.
your children.
Okay.
Without emotional stability for your children, it's really, really hard for y'all to get along. That's because those tensions will flare, because that's where you create that foundation of I guess, the word I'm looking for is connection, And so I didn't early on, but eventually I did provide that emotional stability, the ear, giving my children the opportunity to come to me and just be real. Just, Dad, look, she fine, Dad. I like her,
Right. Right.
not be like, hold up, but she, hold on though, and just jumping in
Right.
that. I wanted to provide, I learned this a long time ago, that people are environments, man, not just places,
Wow.
but people are environments.
Okay.
And I wanted to be the kind of environment that when my son walked into my presence, he walked into the presence of somebody that loved him, had compassion, understanding, and a couple dollars to put in his pocket.
Right. Right. Right.
So we got to do all of that, man.
I think what age would you say, let's say your oldest, what age was he when you made that decision to be more of a presence in his life? You said that about 30 seconds ago. Do you remember what age that was for him? And the follow up to that is, when you made that decision, what changes, if any, did you notice with your sons or y'all's relationship?
So there's sort of a two-part to that. One is, my wife came to me. She was my girlfriend at the time, and she came to me and said, "Hey, you need to choose the streets or me and your son."
Okay.
And I chose them, obviously, and so that was pivotal, because that was me saying I wasn't going to be like my father and not be there.
Okay.
That was it for me. I knew the pain of having an absentee father and didn't want my son to go through that. And so I made that decision. Then two, because I wasn't stable emotionally. Now we talking about coming out of a household with abuse and ruckus. And now I'm attempting to create a good functional environment for my wife and I and our first son at the time. And whenever he did certain things that reminded me of what I walked away from, I came at him aggressively out of some fear and anxiety. And so I had to get to a place where I made the choice to say, I want a healthy relationship with my son. I want him to know that that I love him and that I got him and that I understand where he's been where he is. And I didn't want him to go talk to somebody else about how to get out of things. I didn't want him to have to rely on other people. And I worked in a barbershop, right? Not just out there in the streets, but I worked in a barbershop. And I heard the stories of guys that would come get their hair cut from me, talking about how they can't relate to their father and how they didn't, they talk to their father about stuff that they're interested in or maybe not even interested in. And the parent is just, And I started looking at myself, man, and realizing that I was becoming that father. I was becoming the father that could have literally totally lost his relationship with his son and never wanted it to be like that. And so I had to make that change. And I think Tyon Jr. was maybe he was in high school.
Okay.
So I know it was high school age that happened.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did things shift with you all immediately once you made that decision, or did it something you had to develop more in that relationship?
We had to work at it, man, because
Okay.
I had damaged a lot about how he felt about himself.
Okay.
And I remember the night that it all kicked off. I come home and something had taken place that I wasn't pleased with.
Mm-hmm.
And I had said something to him. And man, he just started going in. And I'm sitting there thinking for a moment, like, hold up.
Right.
Now, let's hold on for a minute now. Like, come on now, right? And then I for some reason, I took a step back and I started looking. And I started saying, wow, he wants my love and approval.
Wow.
He doesn't want all of the aggression from anxiety and fear. And that night, I promise, man, that night, with tears rolling down my face, I told him I was scared and I didn't know what to do with it. I was afraid of some of the decisions that he had made. You know, scripture does say, man, don't provoke your children to wrath. And I was a prime example of a parent that provoked his son to wrath, man. And in that moment, I just poured out and told him, and it began to build from there. My son gave me a shot. You know, he gave me a shot, man, at developing a relationship with him. And I mean, right now, I mean, he's one of my closest friends, not just my son. He receives me as his father and his pastor, you know,
That's amazing.
and he's my friend too, man. He's my friend. Yeah.
Man, I didn't know you was going to unpack that much.
Yeah. I
That's
feel
good.
emotional about it because it was big.
But that, I think, so you said something, and I'm just want to stay here just because I want to make sure that we clear this.
Yes,
I
sir.
think it's vitally important. You said something about you were fathering out of fear.
Yep.
Do you think a lot of men struggle with that?
Yeah. A lot of men do struggle with that because you have this picture of what you want them to be. You get it from test, trial, and tribulation that you have personally been through, and you develop these thoughts like, well, I'm gonna make sure that my son not gonna be born into this, and I'm gonna make sure that my daughter is not gonna experience this, and I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna help them to be all of this. Then you also get it from, if you're a part of a ministry, you see other families and you hear the word coming forth about how you should train your children up in the way that they should go. And all of those things are really, really good to grab from. But when it's not, when that part is not deep rooted in you, where you have the wisdom to actually convey that to them the right way and understand how does that work with what they have developed in their minds, their goals and dreams, along with the fact that you have all of this dysfunction that you came out of, that you only know about that. It was so much fear, man, that I had. It's anxiety. I was treating him as if he had made the worst decision on earth because of something small that I saw that reminded me of what I walked away from. Some of the things that I always wanted to protect him from. Some of the things I always said, my son ain't never getting involved in that. And you just feel that way. And you start, you feel like because you've gotten better and you've developed a little more as a older male or a man, you think, oh, I got this thing now. And so until you start living it, until you start living the parent life, it start crashing in on you that there were some things you missed and there's some wisdom you don't have, and there's some challenges you did not expect to have to go through, and then you got all of that baggage from your own past of not practicing it with your own father because you didn't have him there. So that fear, man, it overtook me at that time. It did. It overtook me.
I think what's interesting is a lot of men don't have a place where we can and let me rephrase that. A lot of men don't feel that we need to unpack this type of stuff, right? I think a lot of men are fearful of having a daughter. A lot of men don't want to have a daughter because they're fearful of maybe their past, and they're not wanting that to show up in their daughter. A lot of men know that, okay, as you say, you were parenting, you were fathering from your past.
Yeah.
Because I think our biggest fear is watching our children walk in mistakes that we made.
Yeah.
And then being faced with the reality of, is there anything I could have done to help them really avoid that?
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
So, okay.
Wow.
What, because we got a couple things to cover and I want to make sure, but this might have to be a conversation that we do live.
Yes, sir.
I would like to explore that with you, something that we do live, maybe at your ministry.
Yes, sir.
We sit and have this conversation because we need men in the room to hear this, because they will not talk about, when we talk about all these mental health issues in our communities and different things like that. And I'm not a professional in that area, but I just believe that a lot of it comes from not having a place to express it, or not having someone, men don't want to ever seem weak.
Yeah.
I don't want to seem weak. And so, you and I, we both share the same pastor, so it's kind of like we understand the importance of men coming together like that. So I do want to explore that. But
absolutely.
Transitioning out of this, what has been one of your greatest joys in being a father?
Oh man, you said one.
Yeah, I figure if I give you a list,
I
can tell you're gonna give it to me.
Man, I have to pick one. So,
well, you can give me a couple. You can give me.
I have two boys. I have a 26-year-old son and I have a 21-year-old son.
Okay.
And man, if I pick one joy, I pray that it's not saying that the other one is not the greatest. The greatest joy that I have, and I will say I am experiencing right now.
Okay.
In being a father, is just the relationship.
Okay.
My sons and I can talk about anything, and it doesn't move or bring about or cause anything negative to stir up.
Okay.
If they come to me and say, Dad, that girl, like my youngest son said this to me one day. He said, now we in the mall, me, him, and his mom, right? He said, Dad, I know you love mine, but look at her, and I ain't gonna go too far, but it's the relationship, man. All I'm describing as my greatest joy is the fact that because I've taken the route of being, through humility, being transparent and honest with my children about what I am limited in.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay.
And asking them to assist me with being better at as their father, it has developed such beauty. I mean, I'm telling you, man, like they are my guys. And so the greatest joy is the relationship that we develop together. And nobody can break it. Nobody. I told my children, I'm a pastor, so I told my children, I will do everything that's necessary to protect you from anybody or anything that will try to harm your developmental process.
That's good.
It doesn't matter what it is.
That's good.
And so the relationship is the greatest thing, Troy. I mean, man, I love those guys. They love me. We fight for one another. We fight to stay together. And I love them guys. They my dudes, man. You know, that's
That
what it is.
and
Yeah,
I
I can
think
tell
that's
you a bunch of other things, Troy,
right.
like watching them graduate from high school.
Mm.
Man, really, man, some fathers, their children did not graduate from high school. Mine did, but I can't make something outside of why God gave them to me bigger. Like that. Like what's bigger is the relationship. The same relationship I have with the Father,
Mm-hmm.
my children have with me.
Mm.
Because I'm supposed to show them how to receive from their Heavenly Father by being the Father here for them. And that's
That's good.
the relationship, man.
Ooh, man. All right. Um,
I know, man.
that was heavy, man. And I mean, because it's like I look at my son, and and it's like, he's in this video game stage now,
Yeah,
and it's like, man, I find myself even when it's time, like how they take it too far. It's like, bro, it's been 3 hours. What are you doing?
right.
But I try, in fathering him, I try to my approach is that I never want to force my children out of the house. Like, I can't wait to get out and just get. To me, that's a fear that I have. Is
Yeah,
that they have to grow and leave, but I don't ever want them to run away
yeah,
or be premature in that process because they just can't wait to get away from dad, right?
yeah.
So, like with my son, when it's time for him to get off, the first time or two, I'll go in there and say it at a tone that his friends can't hear him on the Xbox. Like, hey,
Right,
man,
right.
what you doing? Like, what time do we say? He's like, huh? And I'm like, hey, you got 10 minutes. And he'd be
Right.
like, all right. And about third time, I got to go in there. All right, shut it down. But I try to be mindful of protecting him and not
Yeah,
embarrassing him.
yeah, absolutely.
And it's not that I had that in my life growing up, but I've seen it in other people. And
Right.
I've seen parents in public just totally disregard their child's emotional well-being in front of everybody, right? And I'm like, I was taught when because I have older brothers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's probably why I jive with you so well.
Yeah,
I was always taught, I don't care what happens in the street, y'all fight for each other. We'll deal with that back home.
absolutely.
We're not gonna act fools out in the street with
Yeah,
each other.
yeah,
You know what I mean? And that's going to transition into this last part I want to talk to you about. But that's what's key to me, man, is having that relationship and that friendship with your child.
yeah.
So that once they become adults, you still want them you don't want them to grow up and then have to have this whole new set of friends and just forget about the experiences that you guys have built together.
That's important.
All right, man. So as we transition out to what's going on, we don't have to mention any names, but certain people in politics
Right.
have made certain statements about this beautiful area of Baltimore, man. And I wanted you. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on here was because I know you had a pulse of Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
And I know Baltimore a lot of times not from us necessarily, but from the media perspective, Baltimore gets a bad rap in a lot of situations. And I wanted you to just briefly your life in Baltimore and the Baltimore area, because you're in Windsor Mill. That's where the ministry is located, right?
Right.
Your life in Baltimore, man, how has that been as far as the people itself, the heart of the community? Like, what's that like in Baltimore?
Well, the first statement I really would love to make about Baltimore is the realest place you could ever be in. It's the realest place, man. I know others would say that about their cities.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I'm in the county, my ministry is in the county. I was born and raised in the city of Baltimore. As a matter of fact, where the riots just some years ago kicked off on Pennsylvania North Avenue.
Okay.
That was my first job as a teenager. That check cashing place that was right there. It used to be a video store. And so I worked there. When I got there, I had on a pair of slacks. I would clean the parking lot first and then go in and start putting videos that people returned back in the place. And then they started teaching me how to work the cash register. Baltimore is beautiful, man. My assignment is so connected to Baltimore. I have such a heart to bring it up economically, educationally, in so many different ways. And so I'm also, I mean, I'm currently in the process of developing a nonprofit to actually do that. And so Baltimore does get a bad rap. I mean, I've been to other places and people would ask me, where are you from? And I'm like, Baltimore, man. It was like, really? You know, it kind of like, it just, the tone just shifted, you know. And I understand what's happening. I'm not blind to what goes on in Baltimore. Not at all. But I always think about what Baltimore has done for me, man. I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where everybody was on Section 8, right?
Okay.
And so if you had food stamps, everybody else had food stamps. We all met at the mailbox 2 times at the beginning of the month when you on social services.
Right.
Okay. And so when somebody didn't have food, somebody else would give them some. That's what Baltimore did for me. When I started cutting hair at the age of 9, I had gotten tired of my stepfather messing up my shape up. And so I asked my mom, could she just buy me a pair of clippers? She bought me a cheap pair of walls and didn't have any adjustments. It had some guards. And I cut my stepdad and my brother's hair that night. It was Christmas when I was 9. And I began cutting hair. I started charging $2 a haircut for everybody in the neighborhood, all the children. And then all of the guys that I looked up to, the older guys in my neighborhood, they started coming to me for a haircut.
Wow.
They, you know what I'm saying? There were guys when I decided that I needed to go out and make a little bit more money because we were on Section 8, but yet we had some drug issues in our home. We had some abuse and we were almost being evicted quite often. I decided to go into another, I don't want to call it a profession, but another way of living.
I got you.
And I can remember guys out there saying, "Here, shorty, take this $100. Don't be out here. Don't do this." That's what Baltimore will do, right? There was honor. This might sound crazy, but there was honor among thieves for real.
Right.
And I'm not calling nobody thieves or nothing. I mean, but I'm saying, man, Baltimore will rally around you when you stand for something that's right. I said Baltimore. I sound like a Baltimore dude, right?
Yeah, I heard you.
Right. It's in me, man. It's in me. Baltimore will rally around you, man, when you stand for the right thing for them. And I think what we're seeing even right now, that's what's happening. It's happening across the world. But I'm telling you, man, you can feel it where you are. But if you really want to feel the heart of a community that is not standing for racism and inequality anymore, man, take a visit to Baltimore. It is so passionate.
So one of the things that I have always loved about the city is that everything is there. You know, it's just like DC, you know, and for those that are not from this area, Baltimore and DC are probably about 30 minutes apart, maybe. It depends on which way you go. And if you're on a motorcycle driving real fast, it's just really, you know, so they're not, these places are not that far apart. But for so long, our communities in particular, people have come in, they've used the tourist attractions and in Baltimore's case, the Inner Harbor area, different places like that.
Yeah.
But it's a way, as soon as you drop into Baltimore, you're right there in the middle of where you want to be for tourist attractions. Then you can hop on the first exit, you can be right out. But if you keep going in and you go up 83 and other places, you can start to see other parts of Baltimore beyond the touristy areas. And so every time I've gone to Baltimore, you get a little bit of everything. But one thing, and you made a great transition with this, one thing that we don't talk about, I think our people aren't used to seeing our people stand in solidarity like we are right now.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we have other people groups joining in.
Yeah.
And this is where, I can't remember if we talked about this at the beginning or when we were in the green room. This is where we're living in a transitional moment. Like, unfortunately, with the death of George Floyd, at first, a lot of our initial thinking was, we've seen this before. Is this going to be any different? And that was probably within the first 24 to 48 hours.
Mm-hmm.
Then you started to see this surge. Like, we had Trayvon, we had Brianna, we've had we've had so many, but it's never been like this.
Yeah.
Right. And so Baltimore, we had some things going on there not too long ago. But from your perspective and what we're seeing today, how is this different in your eyes as opposed to, unfortunately, what we've seen in the past is just nothing seemed to come about of it? What do you see that's different this time?
Absolutely. Well, there are, I would say, two new things that has been taking place right now.
Okay.
One, we got new people involved.
Okay.
We have never seen so many Caucasians and so many people in so many police precincts standing outside taking a knee. We've never seen that.
Right.
I'm talking about in our generation. We haven't seen that.
Correct.
I believe that we also are seeing new monies flow through advancing the demolishing of inequality. And so I think that, and I'm going to say this the best way that I can right now, I believe that George Floyd is really one of so many tragedies that have taken place because of racism. And because for so long there has been this pattern of it, right? I believe the reason why we're seeing so much peaceful protest and so much solidarity and so much unity, more than we've ever seen take place in this uproar, is because our getting things changed has to parallel the consistency of their racism.
That's good.
You get what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
This has been going on for so long.
Mm-hmm.
We're not stopping until we see laws change. We're not stopping until we see the right people in the right places, holding people accountable to doing the right thing by people. It's amazing to me that a man that gets paid for my taxes can kill me because of the color of my skin and get away with it.
Absolutely.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Not at all.
So I want, and I believe we're seeing something, like you said, a transitional period. And I think this is beautiful. I think it's beautiful to see this transition taking place because this thing got to change, man. And so in Baltimore, man, in the heart of all of it is so beautiful because I'm seeing leaders raising up, right? Mm-hmm. People without titles, people without job descriptions, but they're just raising up. They're young men that are on the protest front line, peacefully serving their communities and representing the African American and Black community, saying, no, we're not going to tear our city up. We're here because we want our city to be built up the right way. And man, I think it's a beautiful thing.
So with that, like you said, you've never seen so many Caucasian people joining together.
Yep.
With this. Over the last week, I've done several videos on my Facebook page because I know I have a diverse group of friends on Facebook.
Absolutely.
From all different walks of life, ethnicities, etc. And so I've done these. I've had these conversations, and the conversations will continue because, like I said, 300 Fathers is about high performance fatherhood, but that just starts at home, and it's supposed to bleed out into the community, right?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we've talked about is furthering the conversation, right?
Yeah.
I want to know from a ministry standpoint, and we're going to begin to wrap up.
Okay.
From a ministry standpoint, what role can the church play in bridging the gap of racism? Because we've heard this before. I think we both have heard this, that Sundays are some of the most segregated times
Absolutely.
Sundays are the most segregated times of the week.
Yeah.
When people go to church, because we congregate amongst like people.
Mm-hmm.
I just believe, and I know where we live in conjunction with, Midwest, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find out how can the church play a pivotal role with that without being churchy, if that makes sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
What are your thoughts on that?
So let me say this. One of the beauties, this podcast that you host is one of the greatest ways to actually cause change to come about and hold people accountable. And so I commend you for this.
Thank you.
The church has always been involved. Now, I've heard this a lot, and I know you've heard it too, right? We are one of the we're in the organism, but we're one of the so-called organizations in the world that if we film what we do, you're bragging. You should be doing that anyway. And if we don't film it, it's the assumption that we're not doing anything.
That's good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's understand that perception plays a role in every area of this thing. And one man's perspective or perception is different than another's. We all play different roles, because where you would have, say, a church with 10,000 members who has the ability financially to do something that a church with 50 members can't do, right? But the church with 50 is looked at as if it's just there on Sundays to run around, fall all out, and collect some tithes and some offerings.
Right.
And that's just not true. Let me tell you why. One, because one of the greatest ways that we can have the conversation, one of the greatest ways that we can cause change, and because I believe there are many different ways that we can participate in advancing this cause, because we want results. We don't want just talk. One of the greatest ways, because in changing the world, you got to start with your own life first. One of the things that people don't understand, that as a Black man, right? What I did was I changed my perception about another Black man.
Correct.
I changed my perception about the Caucasians and the Asians who are not racist, right? Because I don't believe you can drive something out and it's going on in you.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Right.
And so I do believe that the role of the ministry first is to teach people how to build their communities God's way. That alone will add to the community. However, at this particular time, I do believe that ministers of the gospel, and I'm not just talking about the pastors, I'm also talking about the lay people, the people that are in the pews. There's a greater call, not a greater calling, there's an expansion, if I should say, or add on to what they already have been doing in this cause to see to it that we really get the results. And so even I, at one time, was saying, you know what, y'all, I still have to make sure that I'm doing something that I'm supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I started doing things that I felt that were necessary to add. At this time, I know for a fact that there are even more things that are now being added to my plate when it comes to seeing that these results get done. And so I believe that the church you got to understand that whether some preachers want to admit it or not, our voices are almost being quieted. They have been being quieted for a very long time in a very subtle way. You know, there was a time where when I was out there doing what I was doing at one time, if the preacher from the church walked around there, I'd step back and be like, hey, Rev, what's going on?
Right.
What I was doing, it stopped at the time because I had reverence for that man.
Right.
I mean, it was like he wore a uniform. It was like he was in office, right? And today, we just don't have that. Today, we don't have people understanding that everybody got a different role. So one of the things that we can do is we can cause unity within the cause. And then we also can talk to some politicians. We can talk to some delegates. We can use our influence and our finances and the people that are in our ministries, because a lot of our ministries have people that are in office. So we can do a lot of things. And listen, being churchy, and I understand what you mean by that. I use that term all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Being churchy has always been, from the connotation of the word, right? Not the true definition, but the connotation of the word of, trying to be all spooky and having people fall out, and
right.
gotta, and this notion that we gotta just pray. And,
right.
That has never been appropriate. That has always been just religious stuff to do.
Right.
And when you flow in a relationship with God, and this is what I want people, and my wife and I try our best to convey in our lifestyles to people, that when you have a relationship with God, through that relationship, He will build that value of another man's life in your heart. And
True.
For you to sit back and think that the way we gonna get these cops that are racist and other people that are racist to stop doing what they're doing by laying hands on them so they can fall out and start saying some Shonda Mahaya stuff, then you crazy, and that's religious. That's
right.
That's the churchy thing. We got to really just step forward, man. At the end of the day, the people in the body of Christ just have to step forward. Now, and people are going to be listening to this from the body of Christ. So I want to make sure I get this cleared up. I'm not saying that we haven't. I'm just saying those that are not, let's go do something. Let's make some things happen. This is the season that we have the opportunity to not just call for a change, but see it happen. I believe we're in that transitional period you're talking about. So I'm really not into the whole churchy feel of trying to get things done. I believe that I'm supposed to pray.
Right.
And I do pray. But I don't believe that prayer is the only thing that we should be doing.
And I think that's important because, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you today, is because you never have come off like that to me. Like you've always been a brother first. Like you've never, to me.
Yes, sir.
You've never hid behind your title. Some people will lead with their title as opposed to leading with their actions, and you've never come off. To me, you've never come off as that type of person. That's why I definitely wanted to have this conversation with you, because I think a lot of people have the thought, okay, it's church. They want you to pay your tithes and everything. They're going to say, we're going to pray about the situation. But I just believe we are in a time now where you can no longer live in the gray area.
Yeah.
Like it's people literally, if they aren't speaking up saying, I'm with the cause or I'm not, we live in a cancel culture. You know how that goes. Oh, if you're not willing to take this stand with us, then you're on the other side. And that's another thing that I think has been like, all right, this is a little bit different. Like I see people speaking out like they may write, the NFL has made a statement.
Yeah.
It was Black Lives Matter shirts at the NASCAR race. I'm like, NASCAR? Right.
What
was that? Yeah.
Teams.
Right. So it's like we're living in this moment will be etched in history as that next springboard to whatever is to come. But I think it's going to be it's going to be on our children and the generation to follow to make sure, because this is not something that's going to be fixed in 6 months, a year, 2 years.
No, absolutely not.
This is something that's going to go on. So man, this is
got to be relentless, though.
It's got to be relentless, man. And I know that you will be leading part of that charge up there in Baltimore, man. And if it's anything that we can do as we build this platform, you're going to be one of those folks that I lean on because I know, that from an advisory standpoint, you know what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And I can trust you with that.
You know what? If I can just give you this 2-second thing. One of the things that I think that I have transitioned in is that I've always been the kind of guy that always like moving in silence.
Mm-hmm.
I've never been the one to parade whose rent my wife and I has paid, whose mortgages we paid, whose refrigerators and cupboards that we packed in, the many Christmases that we provide for people, the cars that we have given away. Having 2 cars, reducing ourselves to 1 car for the sake of somebody else. I've never been that guy. I've always wanted to move in silence. And I think one of the transitions that I have made just of late is not to be loud in terms of braggadocious. I don't want to brag about anything that God told me to do because it's really what he told me to do. It's not like I came up with it.
Right.
But what I am going to be doing, because I'm working on something right now, man, some meetings, let's come together. We planning and putting stuff in place and then executing. That's really something that I've been doing a lot more of, and something that I'm really interested in right now. I am not going to allow my influence not to be used to get rid of this inequality. I want to see this thing demolished. And in order to do that, I'm going to have to use the boldness that I use with everything else and do this. Because the way that man looked in that camera, Troy,
dude, man,
it was too comfortable.
I think that was the thing I think that pushed everybody. You had no emotion. You didn't even look down. Like, you had your hand in your...
Yeah, we obviously know that we're all being filmed at some point in time.
Right.
And the look was, keep recording. This is what I'm doing.
Right.
We're going to make sure this thing go where it need to go.
And that we felt that shift here too. And I knew not to turn this into a news outlet.
Absolutely.
But I knew that, and through this whole thing, when we did the documentary in 2014 and even up, we thought it was going to be the missing anchor. Then it became 300 Fathers, and the meaning behind that. Every step, God's been like, I haven't written out everything. It's almost like the pivot has happened when it needed to happen.
Wow.
And now this is one of those things where, our focus is fatherhood, but we have to use this platform to provide a message, because we're all media outlets. When we have these phones,
yes,
we're all media outlets, and some of us do it good. Some of us are weaponizing social media against each other. Some of us are doing so, and so we whether you have 10 million followers or whether you have 100 people that are choosing to listen to your message, I believe all of us have to somehow put this into our networks and carry this message, because that's the way the change is going to happen. It's going to happen on the ground.
Yes, sir.
It's not going to happen in legislative area. That's cool. You do what you do.
Right.
It's going to happen through these relationships right here.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
It is happening too.
And talking to different people. So look, I want to make sure that we went over today, man. And I'm gonna let you go. But I know this is not gonna be the last time we talk, brother. I know that for a fact.
It should not be, yeah.
And I really, from the bottom of my heart, I wanna, because we kind of put this together at the last minute.
Yes,
I wanna thank you for taking the time out this morning from whatever you have going on, just to share with us, and to provide some insight and wisdom. You're definitely gonna be one of those people, like I said, to lean on, even for from advising from like a spiritual standpoint with this whole thing. Yes, I know that I'm going to have to build a council of people to kind of move this thing forward. And so you're going to be one of those gentlemen that I lean on. But ladies and gentlemen, I want to again thank Pastor Tyon Horne for spending some time with us today on the 300 Fathers podcast. Hang around. Don't go anywhere. We're going to close this thing out. As we end, if you want to find out any information about us, please check us out at 300 Fathers on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You can also check us out on 300fathers.com. Send us a message. Let us know what it is that you want to hear, what type of content you guys would like for us to bring. This is going to be a platform for the people. And we're going to be talking to all types of people just to make sure that we get that message out there. So I want to thank you all for tuning in. We're going to go ahead and end the broadcast here. Hang on, Pastor, just for a second. Thank you guys for tuning in.